In 1908, America became a country on wheels when an inventive industrialist by the name of Henry Ford began producing the Model T. Nicknamed the Tin Lizzie, it was powered by a side-valve four-cylinder engine that developed 20 horsepower and could propel the Model T to speeds of over 35 miles per hour. In 1914, Henry Ford's creation of the assembly line made it possible to build a complete automobile in 90 minutes, a job which up until then could take up to 12 hours. The great legacy of those humble beginnings for the Ford Motor Company moved into the 20s and 30s with the Model A, with 5 million of these cars built in 1931 alone. Fords became sleeker and more powerful as the 40s came and went. And in the 1950s, young Americans were suddenly taking a more active role in creating the kinds of cars they wanted to drive, thus giving birth to a new and uniquely American catchphrase, hot rodding. During the 1960s, America was again looking to Ford for cars which reflected the accent on youth and performance that they were interested in. Ford answered the call with the car which helped to coin another new and evocative automotive byline. The title was the Pony Car, and the messenger was the Mustang. And now, almost a century after those first Model Ts chugged and wheezed from the assembly lines, devoted owners and lovers of the cars built by the Ford Motor Company, including those from the Lincoln Mercury division, assemble in Xenia, Ohio, for an annual festival of Fords that pays ample tribute to the great cars from Dearborn, the Ford National Drags and Expo Ford 92. Labor Day weekend, 1992, and the site is Kilcare Dragway. It will be a weekend in which hundreds of Fords, Lincolns, and Mercurys, along with their owners and admirers, will flood the show field at Expo Ford 92 for 3 days of events, exhibitions, and activities. We couldn't possibly include every car, every event, every activity that the sponsors and promoters had planned, but we'll be showing you many of the highlights of the 1992 bash. Some of the activities planned for the weekend were a cruise-in on Friday night, a model contest, a car corral, plus many mini reunions for a number of Ford-based enthusiast clubs, including Fairlane, Ranchero, SVO Mustang, 7-liter Galaxy, and other Ford fanatics. And there was so much excitement generated by Expo Ford 92 that you were likely to see other makes besides Ford-built automobiles joining in the activities. But two aspects of Expo Ford 92 were what the majority of the dedicated Ford followers attending this outdoor party had come for. The car show on Saturday, featuring almost 40 different classes of competition, including the cars being honored at the 92 event. The Mercury Cougar, which in 1992 celebrated its 25th anniversary. And then on Sunday, a full day of drag racing was scheduled, including a special Ford versus Brand X competition. Charles Kreitz is the chairman of the board of the Performance Ford Club of America, the event sponsor. He told us how the PFCA was born and a little bit about the event itself.
Back in the 70s, I went around to several of the car-related events put on by some of the Ford clubs and didn't really find an event for people that had multi-models of Ford product. Like you might have a Mustang and you might have a Galaxy, and the Galaxy often wasn't welcome at one event where it would be at the other. And we felt there was a need for a club that would contain and welcome all Ford products and Mercury products in the club. And so me and about 5 other guys started a Performance Ford Club of America in 1979. And after that, it just grew into a very large club in the central Ohio area. And people from out of the state liked it so well, we decided we should go into a national organization and developed it into Performance Ford Club of America. We've got a number of people here from Canada each year, and I know one guy called, said he was coming from Phoenix, Arizona with his Lincoln, and it's not unusual to get people from California, Florida, all over the United States. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we've had people fly in from New Zealand and Australia that are club members, and Sweden. They really get into their cars down Aussie territory, so to speak.
In the early evening twilight of Friday, a cruise-in is held in the parking lot of the local Walmart, turning the shopping plaza into a huge outdoor supermarket of incredible cars. There was plenty of activity.
Touchdown Tigers! Hey, let's go!
And as you can imagine, a swarm of very special Fords, helping to create a carnival atmosphere. Dominic Abrunzo came all the way from Ontario, Canada for Expo Ford 92.
Came down for the Xenia swap meet and car show, the oval track and dirt track racing. See, just a week's vacation. We're up in the campgrounds. Go parts hunting and see what we can find. We got an old car at home that needs some parts and some tender loving care. Got a 351 modified in it. Air, tilt, cruise, power windows, power seats. It's just an everyday car I've been using, but I'm thinking about doing it a little bit better since I've seen all these other cars.
I hear it's a little tough out in Canada when you're trying to find parts for you.
Yeah, it is a little tough, but don't forget, as soon as you cross the border, it's not instantly cold. We still have seasonal weather like you have. So don't be scared to come up if you guys want to come up.
Fords have always been the car of choice for countless police departments across the country. And let's face it, whenever you gather lots of fast cars together, the sight of a police car shouldn't be too shocking. We talked to the owners of a couple that cruised into Expo Ford 92.
Well, it's about as different as you can get, I suppose. It's just, I don't know, just something I wanted to do. I bought it just a little over a year ago, and I think we got it together in it took about 3 months by the time I got all stripped and painted and everything like that. But probably worked on it all last summer. What you see is done, but still it needs to work under the hood yet. We're building the 390 Police Interceptor for it. That's going to be in there about this time next year. Probably just something that looks and runs about like it should.
It's a 65 Galaxy. It's a replica of a 1965 police car. It was a daily driver that I decided to do something with, other than just paint it and be normal. I have quite a few 65s and 66s, including 7 liters similar to this one behind us. And I just decided to do something different with this one, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I only just painted it like this 2 months ago. I was here last year when they had the 7-liter reunion for the first time, and it was a fun show. And I came back this year, and my own 7-liter is still not restored and ready to go, show ready. It's not drivable, it's not showable, so I decided to bring this instead.
The variety of cars at the Friday night cruise-in was indeed a fitting reflection of the endless parade of performance that has rolled from the Ford factories. Mid-50s T-Birds, rare 7-liter Galaxies, full race Mustangs, including this totally radical Shelby GT350, and several early Ford street rods like this one. But the real display of Ford fervor was to come on Saturday, when the Expo Ford 92 car show would open for business. Early Saturday morning, September 5th, and the show area at Kilcare Dragway is already filling up with the dozens and dozens of Fords, Lincolns, Mercurys, and other show vehicles which will compete for trophies in the extensive range of show classifications. To get a close-up idea of how the show is organized and how the judging is conducted, we had a chance to speak to Frank Wharton, one of the many show officials working the event.
I've been judging Ford Expo since 1987. We've held it at Reichert Ford, then we moved to Beulah Park, and we went to the Ohio State Farm Science Review, and now we're here at Kilcare, and hopefully to stay, since we've got the drag strip and plenty of area, 40-acre facility here, so there's plenty of area for us to do our thing. We have 22 stock classes. We've got 11 classes for the modified vehicles, 2 are the radical custom classes, and then 3 special interest classes. And that's a total of 38 classes in all. I think we've got about 20 judges this year, and we'll still probably be here until about 6 o'clock tonight, I would imagine. Quite a few hours, considering we started at 9 this morning registering a couple hundred cars. There's probably about, on the grounds, 500, and then a lot of them are here just to drag, Some of them are here to display only, and I'd say there's probably about 225 here just to be judged. The first thing we do on the body is we'll ask him to close all of his door panels, his trunk, and his hood, and we want to check the alignedness and straightness of fitment of his body panels, and then we'll also check the finish on the paint, the luster, and then whether he has dents or respray areas and so on. And then we'll look at his glass to make sure it's not overly faded or cracked anywhere. And then we go to his chrome trim and his stainless, check for general wear or dents. Okay, what we're looking at for here, this particular car is in an unrestored original class, and you don't want to come up and see that everything has been repainted. This should be the original factory paint and not be resprayed. And as you can see, if the camera will show, there is some minor scaling and rusting in here, but this is original finish. It's never been resprayed, and this is what this guy will get points on for originality. To the interior of the car. And then what we're looking for is any rips, tears inside the seat panels and the carpet, the door panels, the headliner. Sometimes they have some paint on the inside. You want to look for your door sill plates. A lot of times they get a lot of wear and tear where people are getting in and out of the cars. Now we have the trunk, and on this particular model, this Mustang was basically a factory race car, and in order to have a little bit better weight distribution, they moved the battery to the rear of the car. Most of your cars didn't come like that. A lot of racers will do that, but that is an original and correct application for that. And then you want to look for the speckle paint, the gray, black, and white mix. And he's got his original Space Saver spare tire. Have a can of inflator that'll inflate that up to full size. It looks really small, but it will come up to be a full-size tire. Now, a lot of people will put either add or take off leaf springs. Some people will put shackles at the rear of their suspension. A lot of younger, my generation style, will put a set of air shocks on the car to hike the rear end in the air to fit larger than stock or original tires and wheels. Sometimes they'll use what they call a cherry bomb muffler on their exhaust. A lot of times they'll put non-factory headers on the car and then bolt the cherry bombs right up to the headers. That's always real easy to pick out. And then, like I said, a lot of people have a tendency to, and before recent years and MIG welders came into current use, they'd pop rivet floor pans in. And I've seen a lot of those, and you'll see rivets hanging off the bottom of the car, and it doesn't look very good, and it's not very strong, and with these unibodies, it doesn't help reinforce the car any at all. It's beautiful. This will be a first place finish today.
And Dan MEDICE is the owner of this prize-winning Mustang.
It's a 69 Boss 429 Mustang. I bought the thing in 1975 off the original owner. The car is slightly personalized but unrestored. The cars only have 11,000 original miles on it, about 80% original paint. I've been showing it pretty heavy now for about 4 years. Been to a lot of national events. Back in 1975, they were just gas guzzlers at that time. The car is a limited edition. There was only 859 of them built in 1969, so it was a valuable piece then, but he basically lost interest in the car and he decided to part with it, and I was lucky enough to pick it up. We do trailer the car. I've had the car for 17 years and I've only driven it 750 miles. It gets a rather babied life.
Many a street machine has been built on a 51 Ford foundation. Wayne Runyon is the owner of this 51, showing some mild modifications.
Well, I just acquired the car about 3 months ago in a trade, and I've got a few other collector cars, and I thought I'd bring this one to the Ford show. I haven't been here before, but it's got the original flathead. It's been mildly customized and de-chromed and some different trim put on it. If I do it over, I'll leave it about like it is now and just make it better.
Everywhere we looked, there were Fords that really grabbed our attention. This 1961 Ford Starliner is definitely a rare piece, but its license plate tipped us off that there might be a real surprise lurking under the hood. Sure enough, the owner had dropped a single overhead cam 427 into this 61. Truly one of the most notoriously potent engines ever built by the Ford crew. We also caught this truly wild Pro Street Cougar in what surely must have been one of its more quiet moments. The Pro Street look has become, without a doubt, the most popular spin-off of the street machine movement, characterized by fully tubbed bodywork with narrowed rear ends, monster rubber tucked inside the wheel wells, and super trick engines sprouting out of the engine bay, like this woolly 427 big block. A truly beautiful piece that was a real crowd pleaser at Expo Ford '92. When it comes to classic Fords, 57 Thunderbirds rank right near the top. Todd Jackson's is a real showstopper.
57 Thunderbird that I purchased in 1969 out in Los Angeles and then brought it back here to Ohio. And I've owned it 23 years. The car has 154,000 miles on it. This particular car has been modified prior to being valuable the way they are now. I had changed the engine in it in 1973 and upgraded it to a current engine so that I could run regular fuel and everything in it. But I've maintained all the old parts, so if I needed to, I would be able to put it all back together the way it should be. But the car is just strictly a pleasure vehicle. This particular car's got a 1972 Ford 351 in it. The car gets very good mileage and is extremely quick for what it is.
Nearby, we couldn't help but notice this cool mint green Mustang GT. George Reinert owns it.
It's a winter mint green. It's something we just made up and looked pretty good, so we went ahead and sprayed it that color, wanted something different. I just started changing stuff on it, and I decided I liked green. You know, it'd be something different no one else had yet, so I figured I'd go ahead and try it out. It's a 1986 302. It's a HO motor. We upgraded it to the 89 fuel system and changed the cam, put a little bit bigger cam, and put like the standard shorty headers and underdrive pulleys and stuff, and put a little bit bigger gear in the rear end of it. It's got a 373 gear in it right now. It's just something I liked, you know, and I figured it easy to work on, parts are easy to come by, and pretty cheap to do one, so I went ahead and got a Mustang. It's got a Flowmaster exhaust system on it, N-key prime rims. I took interior on it out of a 89 Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. Put an 89 GT rear spoiler on it. It's got a Steeda ground effects from Florida on it. Newer GT taillights, 89 taillights. Hardwood cowl induction hood. And a lot of odds and ends little parts here and there, you know, so motorsport parts.
Why'd you go with the, I'm interested, in the Thunderbird interior?
Actually, someone who lives by me wanted my stock interior because he's redoing one to original, and he offered me, you know, a trade for that, and it was nicer, so I went ahead and did it.
Where else but at Expo Ford '92 could you find an original Boss 302 Mustang berthed next to a restored mid-50s Ford pickup, or track down a nasty-sounding 427 Cobra replica? Did you say you were looking for a certain Ford part? Well, there were at least 200 different vendors attending the show, and it would be hard to imagine a part for any Ford of any year not being found during this weekend. If you were really looking for an unusual vehicle, this home-built mini truck was indeed that.
Oh, I ran across parts of it at a swap meet about 2 years ago and saw the potential in it as building a car for our DARE program. We have a DARE officer who goes around the school, teach kids to say no to drugs, how to say no, and to resist peer pressure. And I thought it'd be something that the kids would really like, but I've been taking around to swap meets and drag races, and it seems like the adults love it more than the kids. It's got 12 horsepower Tecumseh with a 5-speed transaxle with reverse. It'll go about 30 miles an hour. It was built more or less for a parade car, and when you're driving it in a parade, I always look like a block ahead, and you can see people smiling. When they see that car, you can tell when they see that car. They just smile, no matter what the age. The siren from an old police car from back in the 50s has electric brake on it. It has lights, working lights, flashers, and it's built after a Model A. And we just call our paddy wagon, DARE paddy wagon.
From small to tall, this burly-looking 79 F-150 rumbled into Expo Ford 92 with owner Lincoln Lee on board.
Got a 9-inch lift, suspension lift, with 3-inch body lift, 42-inch tires. I took it all the way down to the frame, and it took me about a year to put it back together. I used to work at a body shop, and the guy that owned it was a big Ford fan, but he died a couple years ago. That license plate on there says "One for you, Mick," but his name was Mick Sigler. But he was just always Ford this and Ford that, and so I guess that's why I like him so much. We drove it over here from Indiana, Mooresville, Indiana, about 150 miles, but that's about the farthest I've drove it since I got it back together.
Among the many rancheros at the show was this 1968 and this 1967, owned by Lee Janest and Bill Mattis, who convoyed all the way up from Florida. We had a chance to speak to both of them.
It's a 67 Ford Fairlane Ranchero. There was only 1 year that this particular model was produced, and that's what makes me like them so much. I've got a bunch of them at home. I've got 3. I've got a total of 3 of them. One I've got now in the stage of being worked on. This one is almost completed, and the other one's mostly a parts car. The inside of the bed has got to be finished out, and just a little bit of detailing, a little bit of chrome trim has got to be done. You know, it's got to be a little bit better. There's a few of them that's got some dents and scratches in it, and but I love to drive them. It's a daily driver. It's not something that has to be perfect, but I just like to have it look a little bit better. I entered in it. I just wanted to see what it was like. I want to try to find out exactly how many points I'm going to get out of it and what I'm going to need to do to improve in a big points meet. But right now, it's just I'm here just for the fun of it.
One of the reasons why we came to this, we knew that the Ranchero Club of America was going to be here, and which they have. They have some people here. Didn't have quite as many as we thought, but yeah, they've got quite a good turnout. These fellows here all belong to it, you know. So that's one of the reasons why we came up from Florida. Most people use them as pickups. And for one reason, they're hard to get parts for, is these rotted very easily. The rust got through these very easy. Most people use them for pickup trucks, and they just don't keep them nice. They don't fix them up nice. I used this one for a truck the first 5 years I had it. Then I decided I had a decent vehicle here and a kind of an odd vehicle. I'm thinking it might be one of less than 200 with the options it has. It has 390 high performance engine, has a 4-speed transmission. It's a GT model, Grand Touring. Bucket seats. There's things about it that make it kind of a rare model. In those days, they could order them with what you wanted, and it was kind of a rare model, yeah. So that's why when I found out that it was that rare, I figured it's time to fix it up and make it look better, you know. We've been like the Turkey Rod Run in Daytona is a big one like this, but the thing I like about this, everybody comes up, looks at the car, they know something about a Ford because they're Ford people. Most of the shows we go to, Billy and I will go to, they're Chevrolet-oriented shows, or GM-oriented shows, Corvette-oriented shows. And I like the Ford-oriented show. This is the first one I've been to that's all Ford, and I really like it. You know, because people come up know more about your own car than you do. You know, they know more about the engines, and I was talking to a guy how much I could borrow this one, and so you do get a lot of information from people that are walking around. Some of these guys are into it more than we are, and we think we're into it heavy, you know. You'd be surprised.
There were several 7-liter Galaxies on hand for Expo Ford 92. This great-looking 66 belongs to John Smith.
It's one of 48 4-speeds left. It was a 1-year-only model. It's a 428 4-speed, and I have the dealer-installed 3 2-barrel setup on it. The car was restored by Hot Rod, Mustang, and Ford's magazine for a restoration series. It's a frame-off restoration. Every paint mark that was originally on the car, on the chassis, is back on it. The inside of the brake drums have been done. Everything inside the engine compartment has been completely detailed as it was from the factory, and it has, like I say, the optional induction system, and it has the chrome engine dress-up kit. It's a reference. It's not only a reference for this specific car, but it shows people general restoration techniques, body work techniques and painting, and lists a lot of the sources for the restoration parts that you need, the supplies. For this specific car, parts are very scarce, so we set up a 7-liter registry, and it's a parts source as well as an information source, a technical source. And apparently a lot of the readers like to read technically oriented information and how-tos, and it works very well that way. 1,754 of the 4-speed hardtops, and the convertibles, there were 2,368 made. Total production of the cars, automatics and 4-speeds, was 11,807. So it was a very low production car. The car sat in a field in Oklahoma for 9 years and was in less than perfect condition. It had been used as some young man's field car and during the 70s, and had the appropriate lace pinstriping on it and mandatory CB holes, or CB antenna holes cut in the trunk lid. And it was far from perfect, but it wasn't very rusty, and that was what we were looking at, was the body condition as far as rust. Being from Ohio, you know, the car's rusted out in about 3 weeks, and it was in relatively solid condition, but it was still a lot of work. 18 months nonstop.
As mentioned earlier, the Mercury Cougar was the featured car of Expo Ford '92. We spoke to several of the people who attended the event with Cougars that were far above the ordinary. Joe SOPHER owns a 1970 Cougar Eliminator.
It's a 1970 Cougar Eliminator, has the Boss 302 V8 in it with the 4-speed, and that's pretty much standard. It's got the 350 rear end gear in it. Well, it has the Boss V8, Boss 302. It was an option V8 for 1970, and I think there was less than 500 of them built that particular year, although there was 2,200 Eliminators built in 1970.
It's a 69 Cougar with a lot of modifications to the motor and drivetrain work. It has a 460 that has been stroked and bored to 481 cubic inches. It has the Ford Motorsport aluminum heads on it, and it's driven on the street and the strip. The car is running 1190s right now with no nitrous. It has a pretty much stock drivetrain, has ladder bar suspension, C6 transmission. The rear end is a 457 Detroit locker. It has the Total Performance header, motor mount, and rear engine mount swap kit that makes the 460 for the Cougar. And our determination was to make a Cougar that would run in the 11s, that was street driven. Right now it's in strip setup with the slicks and the front runners on it, and has a modified seats in it for lightweight. Otherwise it's full interior and a full dress car. The 457 gears in the back end are giving us just about the right amount of gear ratio when we come through the traps. We're about 6,500 RPM. We shift with a full manual shift automatic with a 3,500 RPM stall converter. The rear end is held in place by ladder bar floater suspension, and the frame, like I said, is connected from side to side and all the way to the back. Something unique we did on this is we lowered the car 2.5 inches and tucked the suspension underneath so it gives a stock car appearance. And instead of showing all the performance modifications hanging underneath. Basically the car also carries the Ford Motorsport block and along with the Ford Motorsport heads on it. And we've set the car up to be able to run fast on the street and strip. And we do the racing on the strip and, you know, leave the racing off the streets. And with the 4 kids, we needed a car that we could also put kids in the back seat, still drive on the street, and do both. So that's the reason why we chose the Cougar with a little bit of class.
It's a 1984 Cougar LS, and it's got a 302 in it that's producing about 375 horsepower. We do all the work ourselves, my sons and my girlfriend, myself, and We got a lot of time, a lot of money, sweat and tears. It's driven to every show. We never trailer. I don't believe in that. It's got ground effects that we made, electric doors, electric trunk. The metal you see on the fender wells is stainless steel. We've got all stainless steel braided line, aero clip fittings. We've got Edelbrock valve covers, polished aluminum. It's got crane roller rockers. We got a Motorsport 310 grind cam. We've got a Headman HTC coated headers. It's got Pete Jackson gear drive. The engine is somewhat stroked. It's a 289 block with 302 cranking rods. It's 30 over, 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, 54 cc heads. It's got a Lakewood blow-proof bell housing with a 11-inch clutch, Hayes, and we got a 10-bolt top loader 4-speed. And we're pretty proud of it. It turns a lot of heads. It's the only one I've ever seen like it. And it's a lot of fun. I want something different that nobody else has, and that's why we went with this.
On another part of the show field, we ran across Walt Eric's unusual 1968 Custom 500 that had gone through a complete personality transplant.
It's been converted into a Cobra 428 by my shop. Conversion was done with a lot of hard work hunting parts. Basically, we had to find another big block out of a junkyard to take all the conversion pieces out of. Then we had to buy a 428 Cobra jet engine, a transmission, rear end springs, things like that that took a considerable amount of time. I haven't been into racing for several years, and it really amazed me how they've dried up. I'm still living in the 50s and 60s, I guess. I wanted to keep the car as close to 68 out of the factory as it could have been. About everything on the car is 68. The car we found in Louisville, it was an original car, had been in storage since 70. Has the original factory paint, never been wrecked anywhere, so I was real fortunate there. So when I found a good enough body, then we started with the conversion.
Walt showed us these tablets, relating his own personal view of biblical history. At day's end, it was awards time, as the many trophy winners whose cars had totaled the most points stepped forward to claim their prizes. You could tell that although many of these Ford owners had already won trophies in the past at other events, there was something extra special that generated even greater pride by winning an award at this nationally respected convention. Before we move on, let's take one more quick rolling tour of the Expo Ford 92 car show and take a last look at some of the exceptional cars that were on display. On Sunday morning, the Killcare Dragway paddock was packed to capacity with 300 Ford-powered race cars of every description. The event sponsors including the Performance Ford Club of America, Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords Magazine, Armor All Products, Kreitz Industries, Autocrafters, Thunderbolt Ford Parts, and Perigee Enterprises had arranged a full day of bracket racing with cash prizes going to top finishers in all brackets. A special nostalgia bracket, heading into its 8th year, was for 1970 and older cars, running in an 11.0 to 13.99 bracket, with tires no wider than 10.5 inches. Before the racing began, we scoped out some of the cars which would be running later that day. And in our travels, we discovered several truly historic drag machines sitting quietly on the turf. We were lucky to find their owners nearby, who told us about these great race cars from the past.
It's the last remaining car of the original 4, 1969, 1970 factory pro cars. There was 4 of them built for the factory team members, and they were staggered around the country. And this is the last one of the original 4. Ford raced it for 2 years. Dave Lyle did for 2 years, 69 and 70, and I bought it in January of 71. It's a original Boss 429. That's Ford's Hemi car. Front end is glass. The deck lid's glass. The body's been acid dipped. It's a lightened car. And it has most of the equipment on the car is still the original. The first few years we had the car, we ran with all the big names that you hear today in pro stock, the early pro stock cars. Grumpy Jenkins and Sox and Martin, Dick Landy, Don Nicholson, Arnie Beswick. In fact, we still run with them.
Yeah.
Nostalgia match racing with them.
It's a 1965 Mercury Comet AFX factory-sponsored race car, drag race car. The AFX stands for is a factory experimental. The A stands for the larger motor, the 427 single overhead cam motor. During the course of the season in '65, they started to make quite a few modifications because they were experimenting with these cars. And they started with straight front axles under some of them. And then they started altering the wheelbase and the rear wheelbase on some of the Chrysler products, and 2 of the Lincoln Mercury fellows followed along with that. And Hayden Prophet campaigned this car in 1965. So it has a straight front axle and an altered wheelbase, and back at that time it was the first indication to what they term funny cars, which has now become a class in drag racing. They weren't allowed to move the motor at that time rearward like they do now, and the engine had to stay at certain places, so they compensated for that by moving the wheels.
We've got some. We got the Falcon, 427 Falcon. It's the only one in the world. It's all fiberglass. It was a prototype. It was the first one built. We got the Don Nicholson 64 Mercury station wagon. It was the only one of a kind. And we've got the Don Nicholson 64 Mercury Coupe. He ran both those cars in 1964. They had 427s, fiberglass front ends on them. They were very limited production cars. The coupe was. The wagon's one of a kind. His match race record in 1964 was 78 wins and 1 loss. It was a really very, very popular car. He very successfully campaigned it that year. We've got 18 cars in total. We just brought 3 here today, but we've got one of just about everything that Ford ever built as far as drag cars goes. It really makes it all worthwhile when we come to these events, see the fans and the crowd reaction, and really makes the trip a little shorter.
What car are you going to be driving today?
Probably the Falcon, the orange Falcon. Yeah, I campaigned it for about 4 years, so got really good with it, so I enjoy racing it. It started out running 1055, and it was unusual because it was a real cheap engine that we just kind of threw together to get us by an event, and it's probably got 200 or 300 passes on it now, and it's still going. So it runs in the 10s always.
I'll probably be driving the Nicholson Coupe today, see what the weather does and track conditions and this and that. At that particular time when they designed this, they were having a lot of trouble with tires. Couldn't get the cars to hook up at all, and it was their thinking that the more overhang a car had, more weight on the rear of the car, the better it would hook up, the better it would handle. Well, the wagon was kind of a natural for that. It had a lot of weight on the rear axle, and it worked real well for him. He ran the car from January of '64 through April of '64, and that's when he picked up the coupe. The tire technology had picked up a little bit, and it evolved somewhat. And the coupe had a little bit. Believe it or not, the coupe is actually longer than the station wagon, both in wheelbase and total dimensions. And that, you know, by looking at the cars, you sure wouldn't think that, but the coupe was a little bit lighter, and like I said, when he got the tires to hook it up, it worked a lot better for him.
When the staging lanes began to fill up, we knew that it would be only moments before the late summer Ohio air was shattered into pieces by the sounds of race-ready Fords ripping the quarter-mile asphalt at Killcare. So get ready to boogie as we bring you some of the action of the Ford National Drags. By day's end on Sunday, it was time to say goodbye and bring down the curtain on another outstanding Ford Expo. Old acquaintances had been renewed, new friendships had been forged, and it was safe to say that next year, in 1993, many of these same Ford enthusiasts, and perhaps many new faces, would gather once again to pay special tribute to the great cars from Ford and the long tradition of performance that still continues today.